um, uh, concerning chapter 9, and it was noisy. Remember that class with lots of noise? And I wasn't really happy about the noise, and I was concerned about the class. So how about that chapter, language and contact? Did you have a chance to have a look at the chapter and realize what was it talking about? Yes, Mariam, did you read it? Nora, Ulina? Did you happen to have a look at the chapter? I'll write it here, chapter 9, and it is good, Lina, Nora, Mariam, very well done. Language and contact, right? Language and contact. Do you know the basic idea behind that one? That chapter was talking about the lingua franca around the world. And it was also trying to give you the main ideas behind lingua franca. English is one of them, and French, as well as Dutch and Portuguese. And this lingua franca was a creation by indigenous people in their countries, and you find it always along the coasts of the continents, like the African western coast and eastern coast as well. Like western coast, all the lingua franca that happened to create all these pidgin languages that turned to Creole. And then in the eastern coast, there is always also the lingua franca that has been created from Swahili mixed with English. And there are kinds of characteristics that characterize the lingua franca. That is mainly simplification, simplified linguistic form, as well as reduction and interference. So you have to know the differences between them. Like when there is simplified, the simplified form is often related to getting rid of irregularities, like irregular verbs or irregular inflections of tense and so on. When you say go, went, and gone, I mean, these are three forms. In the lingua franca, the three forms are joined in one, and they would be using just one form to refer to the past or the present or the future. Go, and that's it. There are plenty of very clear examples that have been analyzed in the chapter. And to summarize what has been discussed, this is simplified or simplification as a technical and not a value processing. Another one, number 2, is the reduction in terms of vocabulary. So some of the basic parts of the language vocabulary that have been used as being lingua franca is reduced as well. So this is reduction. And the third technical process is called interference. Let me write them down for you. 3 technical, not linguistic or not valuable, not in terms of value. Yani technical processing are involved in lingua franca. So when you read the chapter, look for them and you'll find the explanation very clear. It's so clearly presented. Number 1 is simplification. Okay. Number 2 is reduction of the number of vocabulary, remember that. And number 3 is interference. And this relates to the interference of the basic language like Swahili with the English language as a base of the lingua, as a base of the pidgin. So we have different bases of different pidgins in the world. As we said, there is English pidgin, there is French pidgin, Okay. There is also Dutch, Swedish Pidgin, and finally Dutch-based, actually let's say Dutch-based like the book. So it's the base, the Dutch and the English and the French and also and Portuguese Pidgin. Okay, these are the main pigeons that are found in the world. There are pigeons on the coast, as we said, the coast of Africa. There is also the inland Tanzania, according to Swahili, and further inland in Congo. There is this simplification, and also another part of Congo, which is the rural north. There is the kind of reduced and simplified version relative to coastal Swahili. It's different than Swahili. And then it goes into detailing you about the fact that we can't understand, like if you say, well, I know English, so I must know English Pidgin. No, it's not that at all. You will find some vocabulary borrowed from English, but maybe they are changed, and you might look at the writing, and because it's writing you can sort of have enough time to examine the words, but in speaking they speak so quickly, so it doesn't mean that English people would understand all English Pidgins in the world. And Pidgin language then is صح a lingua franca, not with the native speakers of English, but it's a lingua franca that takes place among people within the same area, like in Africa. There is the Congo Pidgin Swahili, there is the Tanzanian Pidgin language that has English base, and so on. So in this case, I mean, they will understand that kind of lingua franca. If you come to learn it, it's another kind of linguistic system. You have to know that. So this kind of Pidgin would go on stages. There is the pre-Pidgin and the Pidgin area, the Pidgin time, and there is postal Pidgin. After postal Pidgin, what happens after Pidginization process is what we call crystallization of the true Pidgin language. So it comes to crystallize, i.e. to take a third form that can be controlled and mastered by the indigenous or people who are the locals of those places, and crystallization of true Pidgin language is probably a contact situation in this limited type involving 3 more language groups. One dominant language, the dominant language like Swahili, we said Swahili as an example, and when the contact is between speakers of the dominant language and the other is minimal. So there is dominant language and then minimal language imperfectly learned, and used as a lingua franca among the non-dominant groups, and it's not difficult to see how Pidgin might arise. Over the time, what happens of the lingua franca is that the pre-Pidgin will acquire a set of structures and norms for usage and will be accepted by everybody. See? So it takes stages until it is recognized by people. Then, as a result of what sociolinguists have been calling this pre-Pidgin, when it becomes fixed and well known by its people, it goes through the focusing stage. The focusing stage is a fixed form which linguists can describe and write in terms of grammar. So here the resulting Pidgin thus differs from Pidginized forms of language, which vary from time to time and from speaker to speaker as well. The same sort of development might well take place in, for example, Swedish childhood and Dutch childhood, and with 1 year's study of English, like this is another example. Our first example was from Swahili. The second example, if you see with me the book, okay, page, it's an example that has been created by the author, which is a true example. Pages 167 and 168, and you find these examples. Like, because Dutch and Swedish languages are close, but they are not the same. They are close to one another in terms of verb inflection, and maybe most of the vocabulary they share, maybe with some difference in pronunciation and so on. So suppose that the Dutch child and a Swedish child have been learning English language for 1 year, and then they met together. They don't know much English, but each one knows his own or her own language, like Dutch. And a pidgin language with English base might be created because they share English together, and they add characteristics from Dutch and from Swedish upon their knowledge, their mother tongue knowledge, and there comes the situation of pidginization. And the process here is that certain universal processes of simplification may play part, and the same kind of thing, simplification, reduction, and the third mechanism is the interference would also take place. So if you continue looking at the same page with me, if you have the book, we see that the information of pigeons here, as discussed later in this chapter. I'm going over the chapter because last time I wasn't really happy because of the noise and the cutting off of power. I don't know, sometimes, or maybe. Which page, Maram? 168. I wrote it, 168. Okay? So if you see with me about this created situation, you find that the two kids from Sweden, one from Sweden and the other from using Dutch language with some English knowledge, would have a possibility of their mode of communication having this kind of lingua franca of pidgin English might occur. So moreover, so it is possible that certain universal processes of simplification may play a part in the formation of pigeons. Okay, it is important to realize that pigeons, although rather different from other languages, are really different in degree rather than in kind. Noura, we'll come to this point, which is the British Solomon Island. You know where does it occur? Noura, you asked about this. I want to ask you this question. Do you know where in the world this island occurs? And they have English as the base. They call them British Solomon Islands. I didn't know actually where did they occur, but when you read the chapter, you have the idea, you get the idea. It's somewhere on the western coast of Africa, okay? It's an African kind of island. I'm discussing before British Solomon, Yanura. Before that, we are still focusing on how the degree of pigeons differ. All pigeons, like for example, when you say pigeon British Solomon or Neo-Solomonic linguistic version, we don't expect to have the English base similar to the English base in Swahili. So the degree differs from one pigeon in the world to another. There are also pigeons in some American parts as a result of slavery trading. You know, when Americans, Portuguese, Spanish, and English, all of them were enslaving Africans and bringing them as slaves to their own country. Those people, poor slaves, came with their own language plus English. So they started working it out in their minds in order to create a lingua franca for them to communicate with the people of the new world that they were brought into as a result of this slavery trading. Okay, so pigeons are not, therefore, as has always been maintained, haphazard mixtures. They're not just like that. You don't mix things and say, oh, it's a broken language, yalla, I can manage. No, no, no. It is not this kind of haphazard mixture, nor are they bad. We don't call them bad or broken or de-based, yani with no base, or corrupt forms, never. Okay? So, مثلا, I give you an example from our world. Yani, subhanallah, the only place in the world that I couldn't find pigeonization as such taking place is the Arab world. But then, lately, it came to rise the point that there is some kind of Pigeon Arabic that is being used as, used by our drivers, and it's because of our own creativity. We created this situation. We brought drivers, we brought maids, and they have to communicate with us. They have no Arabic base, they have no English base, they have their own language. So accordingly, they started pigeonizing Arabic with relation to their own language. And like, for example, their own language interferes in the pigeonized Arabic. Sri Lankan workers would say madam, yeah? But workers from Bangladesh, because then in their own language they say madam. The Bengali workers wouldn't say madam, they would say mama, which means the same thing in their own. So the interference comes into the pigeonized Arabic from their own language, plus simplification, and what else? Reduction, right? So reduction, I mean, they wouldn't learn all Arabic vocabulary, and simplification, they would use the present, the past, and the future in one form to simplify this kind of lingua franca that they have. Okay, let's continue. Then here, we say that we never call pigeonized language broken or inferior or a corrupt. It is not. This language that is being created as a lingua franca has got its own system, its own base, its own rules, but they understand it. And now when we come to talk to our drivers, we break our Arabic and we think we're talking like them. It's really funny. No, we don't talk like them because we don't know their language, the lingua franca, but we understand because it's partly Arabic or mostly Arabic, but we can't use it. So let's stick to our Arabic with them so that they can understand and avoid misunderstanding. Okay, here comes the British Solomon Islands. The British Solomon Islands also have the pidgin language there used, and it's often known by linguists as Neo-Solomonic pidgin. Neo, like that, Neo-Solomonic pidgin. Yes, what about it? I mean, I like the example given here. And if you can see, to prove the point that these pigeons have their own, what does that mean, ya Noura? Kai kai. What does the kai kai mean in that language? You know how to speak that. Yeah, it means food or what? Or eat. You see? So they use one term for two things. Yani even in Arabic and other languages, in French, food is one word, one vocabulary, and eat is another vocabulary, because one is a noun and one is a verb. But there is this kind of reduction that they have. And they have certain features like the duplication, kai kai, So when they want to say, for example, in another instance, like strong man, they say, I don't know what. And it's very nice. We go over them. Like instead of saying a hero or an important man, they say biggie. No, if they say biggie, means a famous man, biggie man, right? So here, we find that it works with the duplication, it works with the reduction, the simplification, and it has its own system. It has its own mechanism that is learned by its speakers. So it's a false kind of belief to say that if you know, for example, French, you would know how to communicate in French pidgin or English in English pidgin. It's not true. Let's have a look at that example on page. Yeah, what about that? Look at him. Yeah, Nora again. هو ما في إلا نورة؟ انتوا وين؟ منيرة ولينا وفاتن ونعيمة ونعمة. وينكم? Are you with us? Yeah. Lakotim is to go. Yeah. So let's have a look here. We have the English passage and we have the pidgin, lingua franca of the Solomon Islands passage. It's the same kind of thing. So the English says, we kept going on the sea. Those people would say, Nefele, go, long salt water. You know salt water, I think it's taken from salt water. So salt water is the sea. And then lookoutim, what is lookoutim? You said, yeah, Noura, to go. Yes, lookoutim is it to go or hunting? To go hunting, yeah, Noura, I think. To go hunting fish. Yeah, to go to catch fish, yani, hunting or catch. And then fish is fish. So there are some shared vocabulary maybe from English, like long, like salt water, fish, and there is for now, there is now as well. They use this now. And for wind, they don't have the whole word. It's reduced. Wind is reduced to wind. And then ikam yani I come. E is the inflection for the pronoun. See? So here we have now milfele, i.e. we kept, going, ilobout yani in the boat. Ilo means in. So there we go. And continue. You'll find that this language, this pidgin, has got its own pronouns, prepositions, inflection for pronouns, and the vocabulary. Some of the vocabulary is shared from the base pidgin language. So if the base is English, so you expect that the borrowed vocabulary are borrowed from English language, and so on. Right. So it is not correct. You might be given questions in the exam asking you that pidgin and lingua franca is broken and it's corrupted. It's a corrupted form and it has no base and it's bad. Is this true or false? You don't only say, مثلا, it's false. You have to say why. Present a reason in 1 or 2 lines. So you must explain. It's not enough to say no or correct or incorrect. So this means that you must read and you must understand what you read and believe it and see the examples and remember them. Okay, everybody? Shall we continue and carry on to understand more about the Neo-Solomonic language, for example, the Kai, as Noura was saying, the Kai for food and eat. Okay, thank you. So the speaker here has learned second language, but the second language she learned was Neo-Solomonic and not English. This is a second language. The base is English. The grammar and vocabulary of Neo-Solomonic, although similar to English in many ways, is nonetheless quite distinct. Can you see the word distinct? I'll write it down so that you feel that you know how important the word is. Distinct. It's not the same. It's very far from English, very far from Solomon. It's a blend. It's a mixture. They mix together and they come up with this lingua franca. And is nonetheless quite distinct. So the language has grammatical rules, right? And words of its own. For example, Kai, There we come to Kai Kai. A Neo-Solomonic for food and eat is not English words, right? And this is the proof. So you might, keep one or two examples in your mind to help you prove your point. So, and the requirement that transitive verbs be distinguished from intransitive by the suffix im. I told you last time about it, but I feel it was a bit noisy last time. That's why I'm going over it. See page 169. Are you all following? Young ladies, hello. You're all following? Fatin, thank you. Nora, Lina, انت معانا ولا ما بتحكي انت? What's wrong? نعمة كمان. I haven't. Okay, Na'ma. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, well done. Thank you so much. Go on and continue. So we said that those languages have got their own rules, grammatical rules, transitive verbs, and they are distinct by having im. So when the verb is ending with im, I and n at the end, it means as a suffix, it means that verb is transitive. If it doesn't have the im at the end, it means that it is intransitive. Do you know the difference between transitive and intransitive? In Arabic we say al-lazim wal-muta'addi. Wal-muta'addi requires an object. Al-lazim doesn't require an object, etc. It goes on like that. Compare, he gives you an example of the verb to go. The verb to go, yeah, that's right, yes, Fatin. The verb to go, which is lookouting, is not a grammatical rule of English when you have the im. Because go in English, yeah, verb lazim or verb muta'addi. The subject and the verb and the object, all for an object. If you want to, but they have their own rules here. He's telling you that the verb to go in English is intransitive. So you might expect that, wallahi, that this is an intransitive verb. It shouldn't have the im, this kind of inflection, because it's an intransitive. Like in this kind of verb in the Solomonic pigeon is considered as that suffix appears with that verb, so that verb is considered in that language as transitive. It is therefore quite desirable on linguistic grounds alone to regard Neo-Solomonic and other varieties of Pidgin English as languages quite separate from English. That is very important. So all Pidginized languages are separate from their base in terms of grammatical rules, inflections, vocabulary-wise, unless there are some borrowing vocabulary here and there, as well as, all the processes of simplification and reduction and interference and all that. So there are languages all on their own. Another good social reason for doing this is that many people have objected to pidgins on the grounds that they have corrupted the purity of English. Like when you look at the language used by our maids and drivers and workers in our country, you say, "Allah, haram, they are not supposed to do that, they're breaking Arabic." It's not our decision. That is how language works. It's not our decision. It came into existence for certain reasons, for communication, and it carries on. It's not waiting for our permission as Arabs, or as English people, or as French, etc., or some other European languages. So views like that are often accompanied by sentiments. Sentiments, our emotions. So we don't use our emotions. We look at the situation the way it is objectively. So we can't be subjective. Otherwise, we will not end up by having proper view. So here we should avoid being racists we should avoid being sentimental, so that we avoid saying that this is culturally corrupted, it's against purity as well, and so on. All these are not good words to describe the situation. Purity would be based on inferior or corruption, racist, racial, all of that. So one point that a linguist can take into consideration when you face views such as these is to point out that there is no such thing as a purity language. Look at Arabic language. Is Arabic language today the same as it was last century? If you read a newspaper that was published in the early 20th century, would it? Of course it's not. Bravo alaykum. Yes, of course it is not. Hatta literature. And literature of it's different. That's right, ya Noura, and everybody, and Fatin, and all of you. The literature also, مش احنا بندرس literature of the 19th century, the literature of the 18th century, the literature of the new era, the new age, etc. طيب خلينا نكمل. Vocabulary alone, for example, if you focus on vocabulary and refer to those pages that have been presented, we find that the vocabulary alone, 15 different words in the previous sentence on page 168, 7 have been borrowed from English, by English from foreign languages during the past 1,000 years. Yani even English language has got borrowed words. طيب وإحنا Arabic language have got plenty of borrowed words. Yani in the Quran we have borrowed words from فارس الفارسية صح؟ اللي هم زرابي you know, words like that. So in this case, borrowing, yani languages interfere. We can't stop that, so we shouldn't be subjective. We don't use our emotions and so on. Carry on for that important part, which is also on page 169. Most of the better known pidgin languages in the world are the result of travel. We said that. Alright, travel down, and as well as part of European trade. Alright, trade down. These are keywords: travel, trade, and colonization. Now we don't have colonization. We haven't colonized. We are poor people. We don't colonize other nations. هم اللي they colonize, صح? So colonization and slavery. Slavery, trade. Enslaving people from Africa. And it's a result of this, all of these processes in the world, they are based on languages like English, French, and Portuguese. Just to remind you, I think I wrote them before, but we have to remember them because they form a base for this chapter to understand and carry on with it. Right, okay. So English-based pidgins were formerly found in North America at both ends of the slave trade in Africa and the Caribbean, in New Zealand and in China as well. No? So in USA, there is the Caribbean and the North American trade of African slaves. Caribbean, double B, E-A-N, and Africa, or African American, just to get the idea. So they are still found in Australia, in China, Australia as well, West Africa and Solomon Islands, as we have seen in the New Guyana. You see here it says Solomon Island in New Guyana. So it's somewhere along the coast of the African continent, where Pidgin English is often referred to by linguists as stock piscine. So this is stock, and then piscine. Okay, stock piscine, which is the name for the language in the language. So language in the language is stock, and then piscine like pool inside it. So not all Pidgin languages have a rising in this way. Some of them, Pidginization is very rich. It's a rich kind of processing. It doesn't have one processing. So we have language inside the language, talk piscine, and we have also Kituba. Not all Pidgin languages have a rising in the same way though. So there is Kituba. Let me write it down as well. Kituba. And how about that one? Which is derived from Kikongo and Bantu languages. Derived from Congo. You know Congo into. We all know Congo. Kikongo. Congo and Bantu languages. Alright, so it's a Pidgin widely used in Western Congo. In Western Congo and adjoining area and the areas around it. There is Fanagolo, which is based in Zulu. Write it down. Fanagolo, based on Zulu. Which is a Pidgin spoken in South Africa. That's not the only language in South Africa. There is an A missing, sorry. Africa. Okay, it's not the only language. And the adjoining areas or countries. Particularly in the mines, because they have all mines, of diamonds and coal and different minerals. A very rich country of these sources. There are several other indigenous Pidgins in Africa and elsewhere. In South Africa there is also the Afrikaan language, which is a Pidgin of the language used there, plus mixed with, I think, Dutch and German. Okay, see now page number 170. On that page there is a top piscine. Remember when we say top piscine, which is a pooling of Pidgin inside the Pidgin. So the top piscine is probably the most widely spoken Pidgin derived from English. It has official status in Papua New Guiana and is used there on the radio, in the newspaper, and in schools. And that's to prove that these languages, or this one of them, it's a formal language that can be used in formal situations, refined situations. At present, in fact, it is undergoing quite considerable creolization. What does that mean? And you might be asked to define what does that mean. Creolization. So when that language, a Pidgin language, undergoes creolization, it means that it becomes a native tongue for children of new generation. This doesn't occur at immediate levels. It might require 1 or 2 generations for the creolization to take place. So it means that this pigeon has acquired native speakers. So linguistically mixed communities where a pigeon is used as a lingua franca, children may acquire it as their native language. And we are scared now that our children of new generations may start to acquire that pidgin Arabic that is used now by our mates and hada. We have to be careful with that. Don't bring too many of those maids and things like that. Talk to your children yourselves. It's their native tongue. It becomes their native tongue, particularly if their parents normally communicate in that pidgin. Right? Okay. So when this occurs in the language will reacquire all the characteristics. And language will start reacquiring more characteristics, not only the characteristics that occur in the pidgin. Okay? Non-pidgin, we reacquire all the characteristics of a full non-pidgin language, and it becomes Creole. That's the difference between Creole and pidgin. So it's derived and based on the pidgin, but it's not purely pidgin because it reformulates, crystallizes, and reforms itself to get that new form of creolization. As spoken by an adult native speaker, the language we will have when compared to the original pidgin, an expanded vocabulary. So that's another characterization of creolization. Expanding vocabulary, widening the range of syntactic possibilities and usages, and an increased stylistic repertoire or leveling, more refined. It will also, of course, be used for all purposes in the full range of social situations, like in religion, in politics, in sociology, in science, math, everything. That is the reduction that occurred during pidginization will be repaired, but in another different form. Although the simplification and admixture will remain. So here notice that simplification is a technical and not a value-loaded term. Creole languages are not, in some intellectual sense, simpler. They are not. They have their own rigid rules and systems. And there are rather more regular and less redundant. An example of redundancy when you say, I'm not, and then put another negative adjective. So the not is a negative article and plus another negative subject or maybe adjective, so it will become redundant. In Arabic we have this kind of redundancy in having الصفة تتبع الموصوف. So we have الصفة والموصوف like الوردة الحمراء. In colors we don't have الحمراء, So sometimes redundancy is not found always with all types of adjectives, and that's how we have our system in our language as well. So this probably kind of process whereby reduction is repaired, right? There is a linguist, a sociolinguist called Derek Bickerton, and he has argued that children needing to use a pidgin language as their native language expanded in a part by calling on the genetic mental resource. This is as a result of the human being mind, and it still goes systematically with the human mind. And human language faculty and that creolization thus provides us with an unusual and fascinating window into the human ability of his mind. So Creole languages, in other words, are perfectly normal languages. Only their history is somewhat unusual, like the history of slavery trade, the history of colonization. I mean, this is the unusual kind of history, or the peculiar history of those languages. But still, the human mind will be responsible to formulate it and to create, those rules and things related to the ability of the genetic mental resources of all human minds that we all share, the normal human mind. Of European-based Creole languages, those that have developed out of pidgin based on European languages, the best known are French, Ulna, English, Portuguese, and Spanish Creole. So here, we can know now the basis of the Creole, of the pidgin language, where Creole is subdivided. French Creoles are widely spoken where? In the Caribbean as well. So in the Caribbean we have American-based Creole and French-based Creole. We'll have an example now on French-based Creole as used in the Caribbean and the surrounding areas, including Haiti, where Haitian French Creole is the native language of the vast majority of the population. French Guiana as well, and there is in the United States where French Creole is spoken by African Americans in parts of Louisiana, not all the United States. French Creole are also spoken in the Indian Ocean, also not only English but also French. Because they raised those people to colonize, countries like Africa and Caribbean, the Caribbean and so on. Notably in the Mauritius, Mauritius and Reunion at the Seychelles. يستعملوها أيوة يا نورة صح يستعملوها ويستعبدوها ويعملوا عبيد وتجارة العبيد. All these things that took place during the 16th century, 17th century until لما إجا Abraham Lincoln وحرر العبيد وحرقوا unified the north with the south وألغى العنصرية وإلى آخره. Yes, that's right. So it's all related to that. So we can't only colonization, استعمار. And we can't do only linguistics by itself purely or sociolinguistics without referring to these factors because they formulate the base of our understanding and our analysis, linguistic analysis. Now could you look on page, please, 171 at the example that is given just to have an idea. My French is like second language, third language, not even second language. But we'll try to understand and see how French creolization is borrowing some French words from French language. And this is the Haitian from Haiti, in the Caribbean area and the sea, the Haiti island. Haiti Creole or Haitian Creole indicates the extent of the relationship between Creole and French, right? Okay, so here what do they say is Papa no, where is that? Yeah, Papa no, qui nan ciel, qui or que nous joignent tout respect. I mean, you can see that respect from taken from English, and there is no, and there is papa, and there are some words that have been borrowed from French, but some change in pronouncing them has taken place. So that was the first idea that was presented by Derek Bickerson. Let me write his name down. Derek B-I-C-K-E Bickerson. T-O-N. That linguist has said this is the first thing, the human brain and the ability of the genetic mental resources that we all share, we all born with. Derek. Is it Derek like that? مضبوط والله يا فاتن صح كلامك. Yes, Derek with a K. Thank you. That's right. On page 170, that's right. So that Derek has said that this is the first point concerning the creation of Creole and the second point that he presented is that most of the better known English Creoles are spoken in different parts of the American, and like the French Creoles are as a consequence of the slave trade. Yes? So one was as a result of the human brain ability, genetic ability that we are all born with. The second one comes as a consequence of the slave trade. For example, Sranan is an English Creole spoken by several tens of thousands, like maybe 50 or 60,000 of native speakers in coastal area. Look at the second example, please, on page 171. Can you see the second example? The second example are 3 lines, and the English equivalent is given to us. We'll look at the first few lines, or the first line maybe. It says, all important men. Here they say, Allah bin Biggie man, I think that's how they pronounce it. We're on balcony. It says, Dona balcon, right? Can you see that? Waiting for him. E wakti n means waiting, and then it says he came with his book. It says akon nanga an buku. Buku is book. I mean, you see, you can't guess. Even if you know English, you know book, you wouldn't guess that book would be buku. Maybe you wouldn't guess in speech that important men will be biggie man. 1 second. Yeah, sorry about that, young ladies. So we can't guess, and this proves the fact that it's not possible to understand it or use it if you know English. It doesn't make much difference. So that language, Sranan, is one of the most conservative of English Creoles, which is being taught and acquired by children, and has been very little affected by the influence from English. And it gives us a good idea of what other less isolated Creoles may have been like at earlier stages of their history. So there are different types. There are different types of Creoles, like we said, different types of pidgins. Inland in Suriname, other English Creole spoken mainly by the descendants of runaway slaves, you see, because slaves were trying their best to free themselves, poor people. So they used to run away, who succeeded in fleeing into the jungle. طبعا they flew into jungles and they meet together and they start communicating. That's what happened. The best known of these Creoles, which are apparently not intelligible to Sranan speakers, is Joka. Okay? I think that is Joka. So, oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry about that, Ifat. Thank you for drawing my attention. So how can we describe Joka Creole after knowing the history behind it? We said that it's a result of the runaway slaves who succeeded in fleeing into the jungle. So here there are apparently not intelligible, these kinds of, they were not understanding each other, intelligible to Sranan speakers. So Juka was actually created. Just to make things more complicated, Juka apparently also spoken in pigeonized form as a lingua franca by groups of Amerindians living in that area. Can you hear me now? Is there voice? Clear voice? Alhamdulillah. Okay, thank you, Fatim. Okay, see, please, page 172 for an example. An example of English that was pigeonized to have the West African pidgin, and then West African pidgin, when it was learned by children as their native tongue, it was creolized, and then this creolization was learned in the form of Juka as a result of Amerindian living in the area of the jungle. And this Juka was actually, or underwent pidgin into pigeonization and became Pidgin Juka, because Juka was the language used by those Amerindians, and the fleeing slaves came with their own pidgin West African mixed with Juka, coming out with the lingua franca between them is what they call pidgin Juka. That's how it is. It becomes out as a result of this historic event. Okay, so now this is another example and of a Creole that can be pigeonized. Both Sranan and Jukan are uncontroversial, socially and linguistically. They are recognized by all to be Creoles and as language distinct from English. It's not close to English, that's why maybe some of the vocabulary are borrowed, but then they underwent lots of changes. So it would be difficult to make out a good case for the above specimen of Sranan as a type of English. So here there is mutual intelligibility between Sranan and English. Nothing, no mutual intelligibility. They can't understand each other. Socially too, there are no reasons. That's why we say uncontroversial for regarding Sranan as from English. Another example is Dutch, which is the official language in Sranan, and English itself is little based. In other parts of the world, however, the position is much less clear. In parts of West Africa, for instance, Pidgin English is widely employed as a lingua franca, and in certain areas notably is part of Nigeria, and where it has become creolized. So the difficulty here is that, in contrast to Suriname English, is an official language and is used as word language of high prestige for many different functions throughout the country. The result of this is that Nigerian Pidgin, even in its creolized form, has become heteronymous. And to understand heteronymous, you have to go to chapter number 4. Remember when we were talking about heteronymous? What is heteronymous? Just to remember. In chapter 5, in chapter 4 actually. Do you still remember the term? Heteronomy or indigenous, all these terms? Heteronymous, do you remember that? Fatin, Maram, can you give me some some definition of heteronymous. I'll tell you. Heteronymous is a language variety which has no standard language and whose speakers are another autonomous variety. Another autonomous. So this is heteronymous. The opposite of heteronymous is autonomous. Autonomous is a language variety that is usually the standard language. Okay? So when the language has no standard form, it is called heteronymous. It's a variety of non-standard language of the, the minority. And there is also a third term which is called indigenous, which is a minority language. Minority language of original people. Indigenous. With examples you will understand this. This has been discussed in chapters 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay? Especially also in chapter 7, where we discussed language and nation. Remember? The American African vernacular of English. We said that this language has no standard form. That's why it's heteronymous. But the autonomous was English. And there is the indigenous people who are from Africa, who have their own language, and they have been using that. AAVE. Right, to continue. Page 170, 72 now? 172. A third point is that Dutch has been creolized as well, and in different parts of Nigeria, and there was this reference of the heteronymous kind of Nigerian pidgin, heteronymous, i.e. without a standard form. With respect to standard British or Nigerian English, pidgin English is subject to considerable influence from English and is widely considered simply to be a bad or corrupted form of English, of course by English people. So in another area, which is Sierra Leone, the situation is similar as well. In Freetown, which is the capital of Sierra Leone, the capital, which is Freetown, there is possible, probably somewhat artificially, to distinguish between 4 different linguistic varieties. See, please, the 4 different linguistic varieties in terms of standard and non-standard varieties. On top of page 173. And this is concerning the Sierra Leone of Africa, where its capital is Freetown. So in Freetown, yes, Sierra Leone English. Thank you, Fatin. Well done. And British English. So what we have is number 1, British English, and number 2, the other variety. The first variety is the standard English, right? The second variety is Sierra Leone English spoken, mainly by middle class, the second one. And Sierra Leoneans, and containing certain features due to the influence of African languages. Number 3, West African Pidgin English, used mainly commercial lingua franca. And the lowest, Kiro, well done. Yeah, cryo. Well done, yeah, Fatin. Cryo is the lowest variety. So cryo is an English Creole with about 30,000 native speakers living in and around Freetown, the capital of Sierra Leone. The language developed from an English Creole spoken by slaves returned from Jamaica, because slaves started to return to their homeland, Africa. Jamaica, North Africa, North American, and Britain, and is not directly connected with the West African pidgin. يعني حتى even President Obama, you know, Barack, his name is Baraka or whatever, Baraka Hussein, his name is Baraka Hussein. Where is he originally from? بس هو his mom is white American, بس هو يعني من African people as well. And the way he came, his dad came to USA was the same thing, right? So we have still links these days. We can see examples living these days. Right. The following 4 versions of the same sentence illustrate some of the similarities and differences involved. Let's have a look. Now for British English, you say, I'm going to work, yeah? So this is what you say. In Sierra Leone English, you say, I'm going, the G at the end of all ing disappears. I'm going to walk. And then the West African pidgin would be, Adi go walk. Okay? And cryo would be, Adi go walk. Yani some slight difference in pronunciation. But I mean the grammar reduces and the structure of the word is reduced and so on. Similarities between the 4 varieties have led to the conclusion on the part of many Sierra Leoneans that the 3 lower prestige forms represent unsuccessful attempts to imitate the higher prestige. Yeah, how long do we still have? Like 20 minutes? 20 minutes. Okay, in the 20 minutes we try to cover the rest of this chapter, and next class please be ready with chapter 10, which is the last one, Language and Humanity. So here we still have a few more pages to carry on and see more about the Jamaican Creole, the Jamaican English, and some linguistic features related to that language spoken. So we have a scale there. On the top of the scale, there is the official English. And the lower scale, we have rural areas of English where the Creole is based, you see? So this is the scale socially, in contact. The rural areas always have reduced style, reduced sophisticated style, or no sophisticated style, and the educated Jamaicans and people of British origin will stick to the top of the social scale. Let's have a look here at the example. The example of data on page 174 on Jamaican Creole. Okay, let's have a look. Yeah, thank you. Okay, very well done. Yeah, mashallah, I'm happy about Fatin. She's with me, as well as some participation from Maram, Afrah, Munira, Afnan, Noura. Okay, so all of you, your participation will be highly appreciated. Nama, you haven't participated. Why? And Afrah, who else? Yeah. Nama, are you with us? Okay. Afrah, hi. Okay, right. So open page 174 to have a look at the example data that has been extracted to help make this point clear concerning that scale we were talking about. That Jamaican Creole scholar by Beryl Bailey. We have the English interpretation or the English meaning of that Creole. So once upon a time, they would say one time, yeah, once upon a time. So it's not that sophisticated, right? So it says that there was a gentleman. The word man is found there. Okay, man. And gentle disappears. Instead of gentle, they would say one man. One man, Enha, which is who had one guile, yani only one girl, and so on. She was a gay and dandy girl. I'm sorry about that. This is what they say. So here, pick me normal. Ina one pretty girl fit through, and she didn't like to talk to just any man. Never like she talk to any man. So the fee here has got some relation with the fee that our drivers use, you know. أنا في مسكين, أنا في ما في, هذا ما في مخ, أنا في مخ, you know. The fee here can be found. This is very strange, and fee talk and fee talk to, things like that. So it has got some relation, really. And that is the Beryl Bailey's translation onto Jamaican rather than British Standard English. Even the translation was done by somebody who's not English. Okay, so the problem is, however, that between these two extremes, and intermediate points on the scale can also be found. There is a whole range of intermediate varieties. We can guess you fatten, but I mean the book, the writer is telling us that it's because it's written, we can look into the writing. But when it is spoken, it's very fast. And then when it's fast, you can't catch all the words. That's why. Okay? So here we have the social dialect continuum of all ranges of varieties. We have the top higher variety of the language, and we have on the lower scale the lower poor variety, and in between there is this continuum. So that continuum is part of the different varieties. From Standard English to Deep Jamaican Creole. And the Deep Jamaican Creole has no relation, that clear relation. But the Top Jamaican Creole has got some of these relations. Right. So there is this dialectal, social dialect continuum itself may well have arisen in the first place as a result of the influence of high prestige English on low status Creole. The stronger the influence, the more decreolization would take place. So when it is strong, when the influence of English is strong, decreolization is found, and the opposite as well. Okay, let's see on page 175, we see that about decreolization and irregularities and redundancies and all that, which combine between the source language and the Creole language, such as the Jamaican Creole, leads to the gradual introduction into the Creole of all these irregularities and redundancies. The problem caused by the English Creole continuum in Jamaica, often referred to as we talked about this, Creole. There is post-Creole, which comes after creating Creole language. So here we have post-Creole continuum. And the continuum means the levels, the different levels, and are quite considerable. In chapter 1 previously, if you still remember, when we were talking about geographical dialect continua, which is the plural of continuum, we saw that in the case of Dutch and German dialects, it was possible to make a linguistically arbitrary decision as to which varieties were dialects of which language, simply by using the political frontier, i.e. that is the border, and that's it. So in Jamaica there is no equivalent social frontier or barrier or border that exists. So we cannot place a clear dividing line between Creole and English. But if, as a consequence, we consider, as most people do, that the language of all Jamaicans is English, a number of problems may arise. The first problem might be is that very widespread view in Jamaica that the majority of Jamaicans speak a very inferior type of English, since Jamaican Creole is obviously so different from English. The second problem would be that children are taught to read and write standard English. After all, English is considered to be their language. So because of the great difference between English and many types of Creole, however, many of these children never succeed in learning to read and write English with any degree of proficiency. It would be the wrong way of learning that language. So for a purely linguistic point of view, a sensible solution for this situation affair would be Norwegian type of approach. What is that Norwegian? Norwegian type of approach. What's that? Look at end of page 175 and 176. Please have a look and see with me. That kind of Norwegian type of approach, in spite of the fact that standard Danish was similar to Norwegian dialect, the extent that they were formerly left to be heteronymous with respect to Danish, Norway developed its own standard language after political independence had been achieved. So this new standard language was still similar to Dutch, but was sufficiently different from form to make its resemblance of the actual Norwegian speech. So in Jamaica and elsewhere, it would be possible to do the same sort of thing. A new standard Jamaican Creole or English could be developed, and we can see people trying to do in British Isles as well. In the case of Scots, remember when they were talking about banning that kind of Scots English to be taught in schools and to be used. So here, much more closely to the nature of language spoken by Jamaicans, it would resemble English, but would nevertheless be regarded as a different language, different than English, right? So English could then be learned later as a semi-foreign language. Semi because it would have some relation to the created nuance. Much as the Norwegians now learn to read and understand Dutch and Swedish at the same time. So that is the Swedish, or the Norwegian type of approach. A third variety would be created. In particular, however, great number of obstacles to a solution of this type can occur. English is a statusful language and is also very useful in lingua franca, and is the language of a culture which is powerful and influential in Jamaica. The political and social relationship between Jamaican Creole and English is therefore not exactly the same as that which existed between Danish and Norwegian. Few 19th century Norwegians would have been upset by statements to effect that they did not speak Danish. Like when you accuse somebody, like as your friend, by saying you don't know how to speak English, it is insulting, you know. And on the other hand, because when you speak English, you feel that you are cultured, you are educated, you are having this special status among your friends. You know English, you know that. So that's the way they used to look at it. On the other hand, many West Indians might feel insulted by the suggestion that they don't know how to speak English, the same point I was telling you. This is because, number A, varieties near social top of Jamaican dialect continuum are much more like English than Creole, and there is no real linguistic reason for saying that they don't know, they are not English. The second reason, number B, is that it is characteristic of social attitudes to language that they tend to be shared, okay, and by those who suffer from those attitudes. And there is also, like when we were talking about English-speaking world, the main problem would be one of the speaker's social attitude about the appropriateness of certain linguistic varieties to certain social contexts. So to read the BBC News in a broad London or Birmingham or Glaswegian accent would be funny. Many people will laugh at it, and some people will feel angry and ridiculed as well, ridiculed. And the same kind of reaction would be expected to the introduction of Jamaican Creole into unexpected context, right? So this will remind us of the situations in the Middle Ages and would have been considered out of place, out of scientific knowledge, and unusual until comparatively recently. The use of one variety in Europe, Macedonian, in Yugoslavia, and as parliamentary language would have been felt to be absurd and something that is bad until this century, and until very recent would have been laughable. To put a job advertisement in Irish or in an Irish newspaper, and in Ulster, Scots, etc. So each language has got its own situation. Look at here the Jamaican Creole and the Sranan and Gola and Cryo. Here for what's going to happen now, Wadi go happen now. And in Sranan, instead of saying I'm coming, me become. And in Gola, they were eating fodder, the nyam fora. And Cryo would say, I'm going to work, Adi go walk, sorry. Okay, so here similarities to note are as follows. Number one, all these Creoles are able to mark continuous aspects without marking them. This is number one, on page 178. all these languages, creoles, show continuous aspects. Number 3, the actual form of the particle is almost identical. Number 4, all of these are related points that can be seen with them. Okay, how can we explain the similarities? I think we have done that last time. Fatin, yes. 178 and 179. We have done all that. Why are the similarities? One explanation was because all these languages are pigeons and they grow up in similar circumstances. The second point on page 179, which says that there is the re-lexification theory. Re-lexification. Remember the re-lexification theory? And the re-lexification theory has 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 points to read on pages 179 and 180. Please go and read them. We read them last time. And a third point is that on page 180 is that a third existing explanation is according to Derek. Remember that Derek Bickerton mentioned above. All creoles are as a result of expansion by children. Look at page 181 for more explanation concerning chronological feature. Read that chronological feature. We are about to finish our class really, and that's why I want you to read the rest at the end of the chapter concerning different types of creoles and pigeons, and the Afrikaans here is mentioned as well, which is a mixture of Dutch and African language, which caused the African known a significant amount of regularization in the grammar and as a significant amount of admixture of Malay, Portuguese, and other languages. That's African. Yes, you have to leave and I have to leave. So I wish you all the best and I'll see you next class for chapter number 10. Thank you very much, girls, for attending. And fi aman Allah. Okay, see you later, inshallah. See you after tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum. Could you all sign out, please?